gorgeous people. It's so nice to see everyone. I am just back from an extended break, and I have got a massively exciting call ahead for you. I'm going to kick it off by saying I met our next guest because we interviewed the wonderful Jess from Common Mode recently, and when I was running through how these calls work, and you guys know the rules, quirky questions welcome, feel free to stick it in the chat box and I'll throw them at Rob throughout the call. But when I was going over these things with Jess, she said, hey, you know what? There's this guy out here that talked to me that's doing this same thing. And I'm going to let Rob go into the details a little bit more, but he has got this amazing concept. And I admire people that come up with an idea. I feel that ideas like yours are magical. I genuinely do. There's no other way. I'd like to make it sound more adult and not as wishy-washy, but I do think ideas like yours are magical and they're meant to be acted upon, like people that write books and artists. And if you don't act upon them, they just kind of wither into the air. And Elizabeth Gilbert said they go to someone else, actually. I don't know if I believe that, but you acted on it. And I think the best ideas come from magic like that, when somebody really listened to their intuition and just went with it. So, but I want to start this is Rob Lawless, everyone. And he is the founder and owner of Rob's 10K Friends.
That's correct. Yeah.
Rob's 10K Friends. And he does a really intriguing, he has a day job that you won't believe. So, Rob, can you please tell me about 10-year-old Rob?
Oh, yeah. So 10-year-old Rob was living in the suburbs of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which is where I grew up, and the youngest of 3 siblings. So I have 2 older siblings. I was attending a Catholic school, like a K-8 school. And I forget what grade you're in when you're 10, but I was an athletic kid. Like I played soccer in the falls. I would do basketball in the winters. I would do track and field in the spring.
Were you like really confident when you were a kid?
I don't know if confident is like the right word. I picked things up easily. Like I was athletic, but I wasn't the most athletic kid. And I was smart, but I wasn't the smartest kid. And then actually like 6th, 7th, 8th grade, my best friend was the smartest kid in the class. So we used to study together, and like he would make study guides. So I kind of followed his lead. And I think when I did that, I started to do really well in school. And it was like he helped me realize my potential. So then when I went into high school, I only went to a high school of like 500 people total. It was, again, a Catholic school. And I ended up finishing 3rd in the class. And then I went to college, and I ended up keeping a 4.0 GPA until halfway through my junior year. And I think
Are you still friends with your best friend?
No, we haven't, because he went to a different high school than I did, and that so our friendship, I wouldn't say it ended, but like if I see him
you should reach out to him and say, I was just telling everyone how you like changed my life. You should reach out to him.
Yeah, but yeah, he was great. I mean, he was like, I remember the teachers would send home his report card to his parents and be like, we've never seen a report card like this before. Like, and he was also like the star point guard. He was the running back on the football team.
Oh,
so
wow.
he was a good person to be friends with. But
yeah,
and I grew up in a loving family. Like, I'm very lucky. I still have my parents today. They created an environment of support for me where I was encouraged academically to do my best, but if I did that, it was okay. Like if I did my best and I came home with a B, it was no issue. So they were supportive and really created an environment where I could be a dreamer.
But you kind of smashed all boundaries in school. You did really well because I remember you guys know the rule. I try really hard not to learn too much about the guests before they come on, but he's kind of fascinating. So, but the impression I got was that you did really, really well in school, but your first work experience sounds awful. Did you enjoy it? It didn't sound like fun. Did you tell us about the transition from school to work?
Oh, yeah. It's funny because when you said your first work experience,
Yeah.
I went back to Chick-fil-A when I was 14 years old. So that was my first work experience. And then I did that going
That
in.
would have been fun though, wouldn't it? Friends and hanging out and no responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, it was the summer between eighth grade and high school.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of my friends were doing like the last summer before high school. And again, my parents didn't encourage me to get a job. It was just something I took upon myself to do.
Yeah.
And I did that for like 2 summers, and then I started working in the office of a financial advisor.
Yeah, that's the one that didn't sound like, maybe I'm a bit biased.
Well, that
And you guys, can I just interject? If anyone, and I said to Rob before this call, because he's got a big public speaking event, if you don't mind me saying, and he's
yeah,
getting over a throat thing. So if anyone has any hints or quick hacks and tricks to get over a cough and a cold very fast, type it in the chat box and we'll share it with Rob. I'll send you the chat after the call, because
yeah,
I said to Rob, there's no audience on earth that would have more hacks to get over a cough than this one. So
yeah. And
financial
apologies
advisor.
for yeah.
No
Well, so then
apologies.
I worked for financial advisor, and then when I went to Penn State University and studied finance, and my first real job was doing consulting for Deloitte. So I was in a very like uptight kind of environment where someone else decided when my day ended, someone else decided if I worked on the weekends or if I had that time to myself. So I really struggled with that because I had minored in entrepreneurship. So I've always been interested in the idea of creating my own path. And after a year and 3 months at Deloitte, I went to a tech startup, and then I started doing sales. And you may have seen some of that on my site.
That
But
was the bit that I saw.
yeah,
That's like
yeah.
my worst. So was your dream to kind of like own your own business, and was that your dream, like a kind of a ambition of yours?
It was. If I remember being interviewed in high school for the local paper for something, whether we were doing like a toy drive or something, and they asked me what I wanted to do when I was older, and I knew that I wanted to own my own business. And I think that may have been influenced by me working for the financial advisor. He had like a 10-person company, did really well for himself. So I saw that you could work in like a small atmosphere and still succeed. And that kind of went against, because my dad worked for Verizon for 35 years. So I grew up in that kind of corporate
Yeah.
environment. But I've always wanted to do my own thing. I just didn't know what that would look like. And even in college, when I went to Penn State, there are these 3 guys that started a company there called Weebly. And
Oh,
it's like Squarespace, if you're familiar, like with drag and
yeah.
drop website creation. And they went out to San Francisco. They did the whole tech thing. They ultimately sold their company for like $350 million. And I was like, oh, that sounds like a pretty good path. But
I'll do what they're doing.
yeah, yeah. So I would go because they would come back to Penn State and speak, and they would bring back their friends. So their friends one of them started Dropbox. He was a billionaire by the time he was in his 30s. One of them started Twitch, which he sold to Amazon for $1 billion. That guy's younger brother started a self-driving car technology, which he sold to GM for $1 billion. So these guys were coming back and talking about all this like crazy stuff they were doing. And I was interested in it because that was my definition of entrepreneurship at the time. And they would always be like, you need to learn to code. If you want to build a tech company, you have to learn to code. And tech was never my thing. People was my thing. So over time, I just kind of shifted into starting this project, which I started in November of 2015.
But you had to do cold calls in the beginning. That's the cold call. And we have to do that all the time. We have to send letters to publishers and letters to, and writers. And I'm not sure. I mean, do you think you're born with a thick skin, or do you think you can really develop it?
I think you can develop it because I went into sales, which was the job I did before taking this journey full time.
Yeah.
So after consulting, I was doing sales for this tech startup. And I thought that it was a very personal human thing, that sales, but I quickly came to realize that it's more of a numbers game. You're like filling the top of the funnel with how many emails you send out a day. And if you send out 100 emails, you might get 15 responses. Of those 15 responses, 5 people might hop on a call. And of those 5, 2 might move forward. And I that was really helpful for me because I was able to remove the emotion side of it from the puzzle, because I was like, oh, it's not really about me. And you can tweak those numbers, right, by being more personalized in your emails, by being a better conversationalist on the phone. You can increase the stage of the number of people moving from one stage to the other. But I was like, it's a system more than anything else. So the system is outside of me. I'm not going to take it personally if people don't like me. And I got mean emails from people, but I understood it too. They weren't, it's not like, it would have been different if they had grown up with me, if they knew me their whole life and they knew who I was as a
Yeah,
person,
it's
and
not
then they were saying
personal.
that. But they were mad at the idea of me, who was just a stranger emailing them 4 or 5 times with no response. And I get it, because I would feel the same way. So
Yeah.
I have that empathy for the people who were mean to me in that time. But it also was like, when I go to a concert, I pay money to be in this person's presence. And then I'm waking up, going to work every day to where people are mad that they're hearing from me. So I was like, something's off here. I want to switch more to that side of things.
Can I interject again? Because this is to draw it to the audience. I think it's really intriguing because we send letters out to publishers all the time. I mean, that's our job. You're sending letters to publishers. If you're not at the stage that you're sending letters to publishers yet, you're sending them to writers directly, or you're doing auditions that you find and you're sending letters to the writers. By the way, guys, if you're doing auditions, even on ACX, you're sending letters to the writers. Always send a message, because in this business, it's personal. It is always personal. But there is a trick to remembering that it's also a numbers game, so that you're not, every time you have to send a letter to a publisher, or you don't sit there, because you know for a fact that most of the time they don't have time to get back to you, and that they will if there's a book that suits you. But depending on if you've had a bad day and it's quiet and you send the letter, and you send a couple of letters and nothing comes back, and it is personal because you meet these people and it's personal. It's hard to like, I'm not talking just for me. I'm talking because I've been getting I think maybe it's the new year, I've been getting a round of emails and messages from fellow narrators saying, don't tell anyone, but I'm going through a dry spell. But each one of them has said, don't tell anyone. And there's been, like, I'd say about maybe 15 in the last couple of weeks. That think they're the only one. And it's a busy time of year. They're sending reach outs, cold contacts. So it's weird because you want to keep it personal, right? Because it's a business, it's a friendly business. We know the publishers, we know, it is personal. And each reach out has to be personal, or they'll spot it in a minute and but you also want it, like you said, to keep forefront in the front of your mind that it's numbers, so that you can have the tenacity to keep going forward. I mean, did you not ever, if you had a bad day or felt bad, did you never have like a crisis in confidence one day, and then suddenly the guy says the mean thing to you and it affects you more? Or how did you work on your kind of inner core so that you could keep up that strength when you called these people? It sounds like you developed a mindset, but how did you keep that mindset going all the time?
Yeah, I should, and it's similar to what I do today too, in terms of like reaching out for speaking engagements. But I was lucky in the fact that our style was we would cold email a bunch of people. So I didn't have the fear of picking up the phone and someone giving me like an angry on the phone person to person response.
Wait, why did you
But
not have that fear?
we just didn't do cold calls at my job.
Oh, you
We would
didn't do
do
them.
we would do cold emails, and then the people who were interested, we would get them on the phone and talk to them. So I was just shooting off a bunch of emails every day and fielding the responses that were positive rather than picking up the phone. So I didn't have that fear in the moment, but I still, like back then and still today, often go through cycles of confidence and doubt. And I think the thing I've adopted kind of this stoic mindset towards it. So when I say I was able to remove the emotion piece of it back then, I was like, okay, well, I have to send out these emails. And now I kind of link it more to, so with this journey to meet 10,000 people, I try to meet 3 people every day. And that to me is the action that's going to move me forward. And my
Three
understanding
people a
is,
day. You spend an hour with them each, don't you?
yes,
That's quite something.
yes. So
That's
I've already
quite
met 3 new
something.
people today. Yeah. And, but the thing is, like, it's not whether I'm confident or doubtful that's going to move my project forward. What's going
Right.
to move it forward is the act of spending an hour with that person. Same with
Wow.
outreach. It's not
Yeah.
whether you're feeling good or bad about it. It's that you sent the 10 emails today, or you reached out to the 20 publishers.
Action
So
first and the feelings will follow.
yeah, because and I've had some really exciting things happen with my project, and then I've had some moments where things that I was excited about fell through. And once I learned that it's cyclical, it made no sense to try to hold on to the confidence because I knew it was going to go away eventually, or it made no sense to hold on to the doubt because I knew I'd feel good again.
And this is the call we needed to have today. So to those 10 people, when you watch this video, I hope you watch this video. I think there's more than 10 actually. It's the new year. It's not you. It's just that everyone's busy. So it's not personal and it is cyclical. It is in this business, it's especially cyclical. I mean, people have said, contact people such and such. Guy McMillan came on and said, these are the times to contact people. So it's not, and I think it doesn't help that there was another recent article about AI and now everyone's like starting to see the end of their career. And but again, those are cyclical too. Then we forget about it and get on with work. And then 4 months later, some journalist needs okay, so this is the great time to break into. Did you I picture you waking up at 2 a.m. going with like a bubble over your head. 10,000 people. When did you come up with the idea? Tell me like the moment you came up with the idea and did you realize what it was when it happened?
So I was working at Deloitte at the time in this space where I was making great money. I had a girlfriend. They were gonna Deloitte was gonna pay for me to get my MBA full time from like an Ivy League school here. So on paper, everything was great. But I just from a career standpoint, I wasn't feeling fulfilled. So I was always, because I also minored in entrepreneurship, searching for that thing that would allow me to escape the corporate life path.
Mm-hmm.
So always thinking up different ideas. And one of the things that I missed most from my time at Penn State, having transitioned from a college student to a young professional, was that sense of community. Because there I was surrounded by all of my friends, and now I'm in this cubicle surrounded by like a bunch of people who don't really know me or care to take an interest in me. So I was looking for these different things that I could pursue, and I was thinking 10,000 people, to meet 10,000 people. One would be, in my opinion, a really cool goal to
But
work
where did
towards.
you get that idea? It's so random. I mean,
I think just because I was so much of a so at Penn State, I was part of a philanthropy to raise money for the fight against pediatric cancer. I joined a fraternity. I became a tour guide for prospective students. I built houses with Habitat for Humanity over spring breaks, and I became a homecoming captain. And I was
so
involved in
you were
most of those.
missing that.
Yeah, well, like I was so surrounded by, I would walk on campus and run into people that I knew every day.
Yeah.
And then that was taken away from me. And part of it was just how do I get that feeling of being familiar with the people around me again? And
Where'd you
I
come up
do,
with 10,000 though? Where did the number come from?
I think it's just because it was cool. Like it sounds so simple. The way that I explain it is, if you've ever heard of Seth Godin,
Yeah.
he's a marketer, and he has a book. I read his book Linchpin, and then he has another one called The Purple Cow, which I didn't read. But the concept is, if you're driving down the road and you pass a farm and you see a cow, you're not going to think twice about it. But if you're driving down the road and you pass a farm and you see a purple cow, you're going to get out of your car, you're going to take pictures, you're going to upload it to Instagram, you're going to send it to your friends. So it's like, to meet one new person is not, I mean, it is special in my opinion, but it like, if you're pursuing it as a career path, it's not really going to catch people's attention. So meeting 10,000 people helped me color the concept purple in a way. And it also gave me something really like big to shoot for that would allow me to grow the project during that time.
Okay,
And
so I'm going to stop you. Sorry, I keep stopping you, but I don't want to
yeah,
miss the good bit. So you have
yeah,
the idea, like one afternoon, and you
yeah.
still have a girlfriend at this point. Did you go home and go, honey, I've got this idea? Or did you immediately act on it? Or did you think about it
No.
for a few months? How did you implement it?
So this was January of 2014 that I first wrote it down in my iPhone notes. And actually, originally I thought I would spend 10 minutes with each person. Like I would do it in a year because I just thought that that would be, I don't know. I was young and naive, and in my mind, I saw like a BuzzFeed article coming out around it, and then that would be all I needed to ever have to be my own boss. And
Yeah, start a podcast and write
yeah,
the book.
I, I just thought the concept was interesting. So funny enough, I did tell my girlfriend about it, and she had studied musical theater, so she was living in New York City. And she said, well, there's this guy here in New York who's also doing something similar. He's taking all these photographs of people. And that was the first time I had ever heard about Humans of New York. So I have an email from me to him in January of 2014 saying, hey, my girlfriend just told me about what you're doing, and I have this concept that I'd like to start. I never heard back from him, but that was like the first time that I heard about his work. And no, I was at Deloitte for a year and 3 months then, and this was only like 4 months into my time there that I had the idea. So in the in-between time, I left Deloitte, I went to the tech startup to do sales, and it wasn't until September of 2015, a year and a half later, that I started actually reaching out to people. Because I left Deloitte, and then I was keeping journal entries in my iPhone notes, and in one of them I wrote, my ability to meet people is what will take me to where I want to be. And I thought that it was me reflecting back on the success of networking or making friends at Penn State. And I was like, that's my strength. So I need to play into that. And when I read that journal entry, for me, that was a light bulb moment of, okay, why don't you actually take action on this concept that you thought of? And I was doing 30-minute sales calls at the time for work. So instead of doing 10 minutes with each person, why don't you spend the time to actually get to know people, have it be long enough where you could run out of things to talk about, and that would force you to dive a level deeper. So yeah, September 2015, I started reaching out to people, and then I met the first person November 11th of 2015.
And who was the first person that you met? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was a guy named Jim Brady, who at the time ran a website in Philadelphia called billypenn.com. Billy William Penn is like founder of Pennsylvania.
Very
And
good, very good.
so it was like a millennial news source site, and they had who's next list of who's next in the political scene, or who's next in the culinary scene or the music scene. And I thought, I'll take that list and I'll reach out to all those people, asking them to be part of my project. And I thought I might as well message this guy as well, since he's the guy in charge of the company that's curating the list. And they were going to have a Who's Next bash, and I thought that would be a good place to go meet people.
Yeah.
So I never ended up going to it, but I emailed, I think I emailed him about it, and he was like, yeah, sure, I'll be one of your people. He actually thought that I was already like 1,000 to 2,000 people into the journey, but it's good maybe that he didn't know that beforehand, because he was number one.
Do you know what I love about you? It just struck me. And I think like everyone, when you had this vision and when you were thinking about what you want to do and why you want to do it, I think it's a shame that when you get older and you've been in a job or you're entrenched in a career, we kind of lose that. And maybe we could use that a little bit more. We don't need it so much. You get the same husband, the same fun. You don't necessarily need to be like deep soul searching. What am I going to do with my life? What could I do? What am I suited for? But it's hearing you talk about it, it's very, very clear. And it feels like it would be a really healthy way, no matter where you are in life, to ask yourself those questions sometimes. I think we stop I mean, a lot of narrators, the people listening to this, it's a second career, because audiobooks haven't been around for that long, but so they've had other careers. So you had to have done some soul searching to be doing this. but it's always approached with a kind of, I'm not, I hear a lot of, I mean, I've got a acting background, but I hear a lot of people come to me saying, I don't have an acting background. Like a confession, I was working in insurance kind of thing. But it's like, I love the way you think. I love the way you're like, what can I do next? What makes sense? Where can I fit? What that energy behind it? I love that. I think if everyone kept that energy, no apologies, no oh, I worked in insurance. I don't know why insurance comes up. And I'm sure insurance is lovely. I've never done it, guys. But you know what I mean? None of that oh, life is over. I have to just, keep that energy. Because that is like a very attractive quality to have. Do you know what I mean? I think it's a good source of confidence for you. Because do you still do it? Even though you're doing this, it sounds to me like you're always thinking, oh, you are, because you're doing the speaker thing as well, which was the next step. Okay, so what surprised you about meeting people? Tell me what you know now, how you've changed as a person from when you started, the lessons you've learned from all the people together.
I think all the people, I always say the biggest thing, and I think that'll be applicable to everyone here, is I have learned that no one really knows what they're doing with their lives. Everyone's just doing the best they can with the resources they have. And I think that so many of us get caught up in thinking like, oh, well, I'm so uncertain, or I feel so insecure, but they all have it figured out and look how well they're doing. When in reality, those people are looking at everyone else going, oh, I'm so insecure, look how well they're doing. If we could just lift the hood and all just, everyone has uncertainties and everyone has insecurities. And I think that was something I learned, because I always say before I thought confident people didn't have insecurities. And now I think confident people are just those who are willing to walk alongside their insecurities. And that's made me feel a lot more comfortable, because I've been speaking for a year and a half. I'm still kind of new to it. I still get very nervous when I have to go up on stage. I still question if people think what I say is valuable, but I still do it. And then I get good feedback. And I think when I'm open with that, it's like other people can feel, okay, I don't have to feel like Michael Jordan from the start. I can give myself time to progress.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You're figuring it out in front of us. And you're so transparent. It's really a lovely quality, because you're not doing that thing most people do, pretending I know so that nobody catches on. You're not doing that in your TED Talk. That's what struck me about your TED Talk. It wasn't a slick, I've got it, I'm here to teach you the lesson talk. It was engaging and endearing, because you were genuinely sharing.
Mm-hmm.
It was lovely. It was a really nice TED Talk. And how did you get on a TED Talk? Isn't that like a big, you have to be I always think it's like one of those Masons, those high level organizations in cloaks, and they reach out to you and go,
yeah.
How does that happen?
That's how it happened. No, a school, Emory University, I think because now universities have like the TEDx program. So I think they organize events every year. And someone from the program reached out to me and said, hey, we really would like to consider you for being part of our TEDx event. We want to interview you. And I was like, oh, okay, that sounds good. So then I talked with the girl who was on the committee. And then after talking with me, she said, they did want me to be part of it. So I think it was a lot more of a formal process than I really understood. Because I also had people from my network who I'd met through my project who got TEDx talks, and they were like life thing that checked and this and that. But for me, I was like, oh, it's cool. It's like a nice opportunity that I'm very thankful for, because it's a great piece of credibility for the speaking world.
Yeah. Was that what kicked you off to be a speaker?
It was around the same time. I had just, in August of 2019, I met a girl named Michelle Poehler in person before COVID. And she did a project called 100 Days Without Fear, where she uploaded a video of herself conquering a new fear every day.
Wow.
And Yeah, and
That's
she,
brave.
at the time, she was like, my rate is average about $17,000 per speech. And I thought that's pretty good.
All
So
the audiobook narrators, I've got them on the screen. They're like, hold on, let me.
yeah, start switching into public speaking. So no, and I think as with everything in life, when you like the exposure is so important. Because when I was exposed to the fact that she was making that kind of money through her talking, it made me prioritize it a lot more. And she was like, there's space in this industry for you because I've had media stuff from the past and I have this quirky project that's kind of different from what people are used to. And that's kind of how she got into it. So then COVID happened and I couldn't have any partnerships. I'd moved back in with my parents. I wasn't making any money. And I started hosting these online seminars for people who followed me. And I would have them join a Zoom call for an hour and a half. And in that time, I would teach them how I got to know people and I would break them out into pairs
Oh, I
to
love
practice with each
that.
other. And I
Oh, I
just asked,
love that. Teaching people
yeah,
how to make friends.
yeah. And that's still what I do today as a speaker. But it's like under the umbrella of belonging and inclusion.
Yeah.
And my belief is that all of that stuff just starts with really being able to or being willing to share your story and willing to understand the stories of the people around you. So yeah, started as an online seminar and then I got feedback from the people who were part of it. They would donate money that whatever the value they felt it was. And that was the foundation for me then that summer reaching out to my followers on Instagram, just through Instagram stories and saying, I have a goal to speak, like book 10 speeches by mid-August. And then I got connected to schools and I got connected to companies. Because
And you've
these people,
traveled, haven't you, to like speak to people? Like, haven't you traveled? Just where have you traveled to speak to people?
yeah, so I'm based in Philadelphia and I've spoken in Denver, Colorado. I've spoken in New Orleans.
No, I mean, sorry, I meant to meet people. You've traveled because I saw
Oh,
a picture of you meeting like really interesting people all over the world or something. Have you traveled to meet people?
so I have lived in different cities and met people in the cities in which I lived. And sometimes I have gone like so I lived in Philly. I met a bunch of people here. I had a friend who hosted me in Los Angeles for a year and a half. I met a bunch of people out there. And then I lived in Hoboken, New Jersey with another friend and his wife who hosted me. So I met a bunch of people there in New York City. And I've driven across the United States 6 different times.
Have you gone
So
to the diners? Did you go to like the old American diners? I've always wanted to drive across America.
I guess I've been in them in like just in life in general,
Are
but
they the way
I
you imagine them? Are they like really like that? Is like,
some of them,
yeah? Does that
yeah.
America still exist?
Yeah, I think so. And I think you can get the feel of it like when you say that I picture like the like silver like diner spot with the red line with it and stuff and like the coffee. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
still exist. I wasn't seeing them on my road trip because I was trying to get to LA as quick as possible. Um, but yeah, I had a flight attendant who gave me his buddy pass. I was able to fly to Hawaii for free to meet people there. I had
Wow.
someone fly me to Seattle once to meet people there. Someone flew me to Orlando once. Someone flew me to Toronto. So in that sense, I would travel, but there's not been an instance where someone was like, "Hey, I'm in Salt Lake City," and I was like, "Oh, cool, I'll travel out and meet you." I just didn't have the funds for it. And in 2018, I had $500 to my name because
Well, it wouldn't
I
be
went.
good business, would it? Just going all that way and spending all that money. You wouldn't be in business for very long if you did it
Right.
that way.
Yeah.
Unless you did it like a TV show, and then we got to come along with you. And then part of the TV shows, like, do you ever consider that taking it to another level and like broadcasting the meetings?
I have had, do you know the Property Brothers? It's a show on HGTV. It's
I'm not in America, so I might not.
okay. So it's two brothers, they're twins. I think they're twins. They're from Canada, but um, Drew Scott and his brother Jonathan Scott. And Drew's like the realtor guy, and then Jonathan's like the contractor type guy. But they became really popular in the States for this like home renovation kind of show. And Drew reached out to me on Instagram because he had heard about my project. His his wife had heard me on a podcast. So I got a DM from him and he was like, hey, this is so cool. Can we hop on a call and talk about potentially doing a show together?
Yes, do one,
And
please. I'll be the
then,
biggest fan.
so we did, but the timing, this was February of 2020. So we hopped on the call, we talked. He was like, I want to introduce you to my director of development. She was flying from Toronto to New York City. I was living in Hoboken at the time. I was going to meet her to talk about show ideas, and then her flight got canceled because of COVID, and then COVID happened. And then they were like, you know, like Tiger King, I don't know if that was popular in the UK.
I've never seen it, but I have heard the name. I don't really know what it is, though.
You should
But
do
don't
yourself a
go
favor.
by me. It's probably, I'm sure it's a big, I literally don't. Yeah, I've never
It
seen
was like, it's a very chaotic show, and it led to like a lot of memes, and
What
it's an
was it
interesting.
about?
It's about the people in the States who, they're not like, I don't know if they're not like official zoos. They're like people that like, they have tigers and stuff and big cats, and they own them and they breed them, and
Oh,
it's like a really not great part of the country, like industry, let's say.
okay.
But
Okay.
the characters, it's almost like you can't believe that these are actual real people when you watch the show. So, and because of that, it was so what's the word, like eye-catching and kind of viral stuff. And my project is the exact opposite of that. My project is very low-key, down-to-earth, slow burn. So it wasn't fitting in something that was going to catch people's attention in the time of COVID. So it never happened, but you know, that's the beauty of doing something. I'm only 5,400 people into my project, so I have years to go if I ever want to do some type of show with it. So, well,
And I
no,
think
I'm
after
always open
COVID,
to it.
people are looking for comfort and close. I think people are looking for connection. Oh my God, your show is about connection. And what do
Mhm.
people want more after COVID than connection? Not me necessarily, because I'm not a hugger, but most people are desperate for like,
Mhm.
you know, in-person events and everything. Yeah, so this brings me to another question. I think you can answer this well. You seem to have mastered the digital world. You seem to not, I don't, it's probably because the people you went to school with, it's not a big deal to you. So
Mhm.
how do you not get caught up in the numbers and intimidated by the numbers? And you'd said earlier, it's not real, that, you know, how many people have seen this? How do you participate in it to the extent that you need to, and then not care about it? Do you have an admin doing it for you, an assistant? How do you deal with all that side of the business?
Yeah. And I don't know if you heard there was just a lightning strike outside and the thunder.
The
So
light went off briefly.
hey, if my internet cuts out, that'll be why, because of a
Okay.
thunderstorm. But yeah, I think early on, because I think if you're doing stuff on social media, it's very easy to get caught up in the numbers of how many people are following you, how many people are liking your posts, whatever. And when I felt that, like in the early days, if I dropped in my follower count and it felt like a negative experience to me, I just learned that I can't have that mindset. So I wrote down in my iPhone notes, like, I am not measuring the success of my project by the number of people that follow it. I'm measuring it by how I make the people that I'm meeting, how I make them feel, and what value I can provide to them. So then the following, it just doesn't matter. And I still had to play the game, because if in the early days, I thought I would support myself through social media partnerships. And I did have partnerships with different brands. The biggest one was WeWork, the co-working space. And of course, they want to see that if they're giving you money, that your audience is going to
Yeah.
interact and be exposed to their brand.
And things like, can you please subscribe to my, the only time I ever paid attention, I need to start doing that. Please subscribe. I remember the one time we got like 20,000 views, and I noticed it that day, and I ran out and I got Botox because I thought if 20,000 people are looking at this one line of my head, but I got over that real quick because
Yeah,
I can't keep up. But you do have to do the bare minimum, don't you? Like, please subscribe to my channel. Can you pay attention? Do you have an
yeah,
assistant, or do you just reach out to people on your own? Or do
yeah. It's
people
just
reach out to you now?
Yeah, it's just me, and for the most part, people will reach out to me now. I mean, I still like, and I keep track of everything on Instagram. So for me, it's nice. I am always posting on there because I'm always meeting people, but I'm not trying to get people to follow me or whatever. But still, like I put videos out on TikTok. I put one out in October of 2020, and from that one video, and TikTok was much more viral back then than it is now. From that one video, I had 1,000 people message me to meet to be part of my project. So it's a
Gosh.
little overwhelming, but it's nice if I'm meeting 15 people a week, then they're telling their friends, and of the friends that they tell, I'll likely have another 15 to meet or so. And then I always have people when I do a media interview or whatever, or something like this, people will hear about it, they'll reach out. So it's kind of self-sustaining in that aspect of people to meet. But yeah, and I'll pay attention to what's trending and stuff, but I really haven't put much time into it. And I like speaking for that purpose because I can go to a company and I can share with them what I learned, and they don't care if 43,000 people follow me or if 60,000 people follow me. That doesn't make a difference to what I can bring to their bottom line, what I
Does
can
it make
bring
a
to their.
difference to the speaking engagements you can get though?
I want to say no, because some of the, like I was just at a boot camp where I was learning from a bunch of speakers who are doing really well in the space. And most of the people that I was learning from have social media followings that are smaller than mine, and they're making much more money than me. So
Wow.
it's more of like, what have you done? Where have you spoken? What are people saying about it? And I think that having a blue check mark and a large following, it certainly helps you get in the door. But yeah, not even as much as saying, okay, here's the 10 associations I've spoken at, here's the testimonials they've given me, and here's footage of me speaking. That'd be like a much better thing to stand on than the social media profile.
Yeah. Do you like speaking? Do you get stage fright at all?
I do get stage fright and I do like speaking. So
Yeah.
it's a mix.
That's the fun of it, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm I still get a lot of imposter syndrome, but it's another thing, kind of like the same mindset I had towards the cold emailing or whatnot. I think the more that I'm on stage and the less I fear the unknown of what is this going to feel like to have all these people looking at me? What is it going to feel like to tell this joke? Will I get a response? The more I do it, the more predictable it becomes and the more I can settle into it. So I give myself grace too. And I think that's something that we need to do. When I started speaking, I didn't have the mindset that I was going to be a perfect speaker right away. And to me,
Yeah.
it's like a sculpture, right? Like you're working on it every time, trying to sculpt this really nice
Right.
keynote that you.
Imposter syndrome. See what you're saying right there. I read something that put a whole new light on it to me because they were like, it's impossible to have imposter syndrome because it just means you're new or you're learning or you're changing or you're growing. And you're always new or learning or changing or growing. So you're
Mhm.
always in the right place.
Yeah.
So there's never you in the wrong place or you not belonging. You always belong, right? And if
Mhm.
you so like I think it's what you're saying, that learning to embrace the nervousness slash excitement as the right way to be. Where I was thinking about that the other day um because I was sick for a while, for like like an ongoing, they didn't know what it was, like what you said, if I get a cold it lasts forever kind of thing. And recently, because I was like, what do I do? And you go on Google and you try to figure it out, and and you're solving a problem. And I realized that when you're young and you get like a cold or a flu, you ignore it because you know it's going to go away in a few days. But you think you should always be healthy. So you think you should always be happy and healthy and carefree with no niggles. And you get a really nasty surprise suddenly when you start not being healthy all the time, like, oh, wait a minute, this hurts, that hurts. That's not normal. That's not right. And I think it's the same with like, it's our expectations. Like,
Mhm.
you're going to feel that nervous excitement buzz when you go up. You know it. It means you're doing what you want to do. You're taking a
Mhm.
risk, living on the edge. So you expect it. Whereas
Yeah.
if you expect to go up there and feel everything's fine, then you think something's wrong. Like if I expect to feel like I've got an 18-year-old's body, I'm never going to be kind of comfortable, am I? You know,
Mhm.
so it it doesn't it? It tells you you're doing something right because you're living on the edge, and that's a growth. So you're
Yeah.
not an imposter, you're the master.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still uncomfortable, but it's just part of the journey. And then I think
You
there's,
embrace the discomfort.
yeah, and then there's fulfillment too, and being like, I feel more comfortable now than I did a year ago.
Yeah. So that means you have to do something scarier.
Yeah, oh, I'm still plenty scared with speaking, so we can stick in that for a little bit.
um, so okay, so you're speaking and you're meeting people. What was the biggest surprise conversation you had? Like, you don't have to give us names or anything, but like when you've met someone and you expected one thing and found something completely different.
Yeah, there's a guy that I talk about a lot because a lot of people will ask like, who's your favorite, or who's this, or who's the most impactful. And I have stories that have struck me when I talk with people. And there was a guy that I met here in Philly, and I talk about him often, but he is a hotel concierge and was introduced to me through someone in the Instagram photography community here in Philly. So I went into it thinking that I knew his story. I assumed that he was into photography. I assumed that he went to school in the Philadelphia area, probably studied hospitality, and was now working as a hotel concierge. And then when we started talking, he told me that he was half German and half South African, and he was raised in Nigeria in the early years of his life. And then when he was
Wow.
16, he was living in Romania, and his parents like had gone back to Germany. So he was in Romania on his own. And then he went over to New York City to go boating on the Hudson River with some friends. And he was on the boat and fell off of the boat and then got run over by it. And his legs got sucked up into the
Oh,
engines. So he said it was like if someone put his legs into a blender. Like, he sent me pictures afterwards. You could see like the stitches where the blade would have like sliced through the top of his foot or like his calf. And they had to take the bottom of his one calf and like cut it in half and fold it up so he would have a calf muscle for the top.
can he
And
walk?
yeah, so they gave him a 12% chance of ever walking again and a 15% chance of living. And he beat both of those odds. And that struck me because that was very different than the story that I had built for him in my mind before I took the time to get to know him. And just to understand what he had gone through, I still think about it a lot because if I'm feeling stressed about something,
Yeah.
like the spectrum is, and you talk about like what was surprising with your project. What was surprising is how much people have been through that I never even gave a thought to before,
Yeah.
right? Like that idea of exposure, these things that I could have gone my entire life without being exposed to some of the things that other people have lived through or been through. So when I hear things like that, it's like, okay, well, here's one extreme of how your life could go. And then all of a sudden, like, I'm worried about money and finances with speaking. Okay, that's good. I'd take that over having my legs sucked up into the engines of a boat.
Did he
So
say how he beat the odds? Did he give you any like words of wisdom about like mindset, or what do you think it was about him that made him able to beat those odds?
yeah, I don't know. We didn't really, I don't recall talking about it. He was the 1300th person that
Uh,
I met. So it was always 4,000 people ago. And I've seen him since then, but yeah, we didn't talk about it. Yeah, I don't know, but it's just inspiring for me nonetheless.
have you kept in touch with any of the other people? Have you like become best friends with anyone, or like kept in touch with anyone after the call, after the talks? How
Yeah,
do
I
you
met
mostly do this? In person when you can? Do you ever do it just over the internet with people?
everything was in person until COVID happened. So the first
Yeah,
3,259 people were all in person.
it's
And then,
numbers.
yeah, I just know because I've talked about them so much. And then everyone, not everyone, the majority of people since then have been virtual, but I still do a lot of in-person meetings when I can. So yeah, in person is still, and I would like to get back to like a 60-40 in person virtual split. But yeah, I met a guy. So I was subletting a place from January until October in Philadelphia. And as I was coming up on the end of that sublet in September, I needed a new place to stay. And I put out on my Instagram stories, does anyone know any realtors or places in the city that you know of? And a guy that I had met like a month or two before said, there's a unit opening up in my girlfriend's place. Message this woman and tell her you're a referral. So I did that. And then when I came to see the apartment, initially I thought that that woman was a realtor, but she was actually the owner of the unit. So when I came to see it, she was like, cool, you like it? Cool. All right, you can move in whenever you want. And so that's this apartment that I have now. And that guy who sent that, he moved in with his girlfriend a week after I moved in. So he's my next door neighbor now. Like I hear, if I'm laying in bed at night, because our doors, I can hear like when he takes
Yeah.
his dog out and stuff. So,
But so because I might be wrong, but do you think that all these people you've met has made the world seem like a friendlier place to you? Like, do you
yes.
not feel that like you're amongst friends everywhere you go, that everyone you meet is just like they're either already a friend or a future friend?
Yeah, and it puts more accountability on me to be a good person too, because you don't want to be like a jerk to someone who at this point could be a friend of someone that I've met, a friend of a friend or something
Oh,
like
good
that.
point. Good
So
point. You don't want to
yeah,
be like, taking cabs from anyone.
right. So it forces me to be, not that I'm a bad person, but like
I
it just
know.
makes you aware of how you interact with people. And
Yeah.
I try to treat everyone, and I see everyone too. I think that I always say like my mind is kind of trained to think about people with depth. I think a lot of us, most of our interactions with strangers are surface level. It's you're getting your coffee and it's the minute conversation you have with that person, or if someone cuts you off or whatever. For me, most of the interactions that I have with strangers are hour-long, in-depth conversations. So when I think about people, I think about their childhood, their adolescence, their career, where they are now, instead of thinking, oh, that's the coffee person or whatever. So yeah, it's reframed the way I see people.
I love that. I've always, my favorite friends were always strangers. I never like understood, which isn't always a good thing because you tend to ask inappropriate questions to people you've literally met 3 minutes ago and not
Mm.
understand why they're like shocked. Um, Kevin Michael Connolly was born without legs. He did a photo book of pictures he took of people looking at him. The majority of them came up with stories of why he didn't have legs, depending on where in the world they were. That's from Kim. That's
Mm.
wow. And do you know what it makes us think? What stories do we come up with about each other? And we never
Hmm.
stop. Wow,
Yeah.
that's interesting, Kim. And then there's something from earlier. Tad, did you say you're from Philadelphia?
Yes.
Have you been to Bob's Diner?
Bob's Diner. I think. Let me see. I'm gonna look it up on my phone real quick.
Because if you haven't, you have to go to Bob's Diner. Tad says it is a
Okay.
key stop.
A Bob's Diner on Ridge Avenue. I have not been there,
You got to
but
go
yeah,
to
that's
Bob's Diner and take a picture of you in front of it and send it to us.
okay. So remember, I was saying like I think the silver with the red kind of line,
Yeah.
like
Oh
this
my
is the
gosh,
Bob's
that's my
Diner.
diner. Yes.
Yeah,
That's
that's
the one
Bob's
I
Diner.
pictured you at. Okay, you got to go to Bob's Diner and tell me what the food tastes
Okay.
like. I miss American food. Okay,
Okay.
I have two key questions for you. I want to get them in. The first one is, what do you dream about? What would you love? What's like your biggest, most wonderful dream of something you'd like to do, achieve, have, somewhere you'd like to live?
I mean nowadays I dream about stability, like but the next level of that dream is just infusing empathy into the world. So as I've done my project, I've become more passionate about creating empathy and helping people feel seen and heard. And I think that that would solve a lot of issues that exist in society. And I think I've done my project so long by thinking about the purchase of every cup of coffee or like stressing about the purchase of a tank of gas. And so speaking's been really great because it's allowed me to like free myself from those thoughts a bit. And I now dream about getting to the point where I'm not trying not to be a starving artist, but where I'm actually thriving in what I'm doing and
Why do you
showing
not
people that.
compile it into a book? Because it would be a beautiful book. You've got the photos, you've got it already written. It'd be
I
beautiful,
will.
coffee table book or something, with everyone's
Yeah.
stories.
Someday,
Yeah,
someday there will be a book. Um, yeah, I think that's been one of the challenges about entrepreneurship is you have 10 things that you can do. What's the order in which you do them and how much time do you dedicate to
time.
this versus that?
Yeah,
So a book is on the table in the future. Right now, speaking is so front of mind because it's the first time that I've seen I can make actual real money repeatedly.
yeah.
And so I'm
Build
diving into
momentum.
that. But yeah, so I dream like I would like to be a professor after I finish my project and have a course where first year students pair off one-on-one every class period and learn from each other's backgrounds as opposed to a textbook or a PowerPoint slide.
Leo Biscaglia. Do you know Leo Biscaglia? Biscaglia. I've always said Biscaglia. Okay, you got to
No.
look up Leo Biscaglia. Okay, he was a teacher at university and he taught a class on love.
Okay.
And he is amazing. He's like my all-time favorite speaker in the entire world. His
Okay.
classes were like sold out. Yeah, you've got to look him up. I think that's exactly, I could see you being the next Leo Biscaglia. Okay, so last question,
Sure.
most important one. If you could leave one thing, piece of advice, words of wisdom, if the people watching this video in the next 60 years or so walk away with one thing, one impression, one thing they remember you by from this call, what would you like to say to them?
I think my message, I think it's something that I actually believe in, is to start incorporating intentional connection into your life. Like I always tell people, I have this goal to meet 10,000 people, and like you and I wouldn't be having this conversation right now if I didn't have this goal. Like the concept to meet 10,000 people became this key that opened up so many different novel experiences for me. And when I meet with people, I always say I believe every human interaction has the potential to change your life. So for example, like I meet Jess, you meet Jess, then she puts us together, and now like this thing is in motion. But when it blows my mind that people will have a goal, New Year's resolution, oh, I'm going to go to the gym 3 days a week, or I'm going to read 12 books this year. You don't ever hear people being like, I'm going to meet one new person a month this year. I'm going to have coffee with someone from my community that inspires me or that I want to learn from. And when you have a concept, if it's like, hey, this is the person who has this New Year's resolution, then somehow people want to help you achieve that goal where they're like, oh, well, I'll sit with you in February, or I'll grab coffee with you in
Love
June. And
that.
when you do that, you get like song recommendations, you get book recommendations. You have to have the mindset that like this person doesn't owe you anything. You're simply there to learn. And in fact, you should think about what value you can bring to them. But when you incorporate that intentional connection into your life, it just opens so many different doors. And it's the same as like going to a restaurant and trying a new food because it's an experience. So that would be the thing, is to be more intentional about connection and then to treat it as an experience rather than a transaction, because that will help you actually appreciate it for what it is.
I love that because the sharing of the energy, I think if we all shared our energy, we'd be stronger. Our energy would be stronger. Like the things that I've learned, if I look back in the last 2 years, the things I remember that have changed me are things I learned on these calls
Mm-hmm.
with, fellow narrators. I've learned a lot from the books, but I've learned the most from the people, from each person, including you. Okay, and Kim says you would be a great professor, and I'll send you this after the call, but suggestions are throat coat tea and ginger
Okay.
shots tea. So
Okay.
you got to try those, and the ginger and lemon that I said earlier. So we'll have you better for
Okay.
your next speaking engagement.
Yeah.
And you guys, all the links, if you're curious, will be on the About page. Send me any links you want me to include, Rob. They'll be on the About page of the video, which will be up within 2 weeks.
Okay.
And check out Rob's Instagram page. It's quite something. It's really cool. It's like, it's very cool concept. And I just think what you've done is beyond you and your role in it. Yeah, Jeff says this dude freaking rocks, and that's it. I think that's pretty much. I was going to do a long-winded version of that, but I think Jeff's nailed it. Yeah, you freaking rock.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, and I appreciate you giving me a platform to share my story. I'm always doing it for other people, which I really enjoy, and it's nice to share a bit about what I've learned. So thank you to you and everyone on the call for taking interest in it.
I bow down to you. I just think what you've done is amazing. So thank you so much. And thanks for taking the time to join us, Rob.
Of course. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye. Bye, everyone. Mwah. See you later. Bye. Bye. Take care. Hope you feel better soon.
Yeah,
Bye.
thank you. See you.
Bye.